Why the Panther tank was feared and failed July 1943. Kursk, the largest tank battle in history. Germany unveils its answer to the Soviet T-34, the Panther. Sloped armor that can deflect almost anything the Allies throw at it. A high-velocity 75mm gun that can penetrate enemy tanks from over a mile away. Speed and mobility that rivals medium tanks despite weighing 45 tons. Allied intelligence calls it the best tank of World War II. Then the Panthers start burning. Not from enemy fire, from their own engines catching fire. Final drives snap under the weight. Transmissions seize. Of the 200 Panthers deployed at Kursk, more are lost to mechanical failure than to Soviet guns. One Panzer battalion reports that after just 450 miles, their engines are dead. By September 1944, German units report that only 35% of their Panthers are operational at any given time. This is the story of a tank that terrified Allied crews and German mechanics in equal measure, and how engineering brilliance created a strategic disaster. June 1941, Operation Barbarossa. German panzer divisions roll into the Soviet Union expecting quick victory. They've crushed France, the Low Countries, Poland. Their Panzer III and IV tanks are proven, effective weapons. German tankers are confident, even cocky. Then they meet the T-34, and everything changes. The T-34 isn't just good, it's revolutionary. Sloped armor that makes it nearly immune to German 37mm and 50mm guns. A 76mm gun that can destroy German tanks at range. Wide tracks that let it cross mud and snow where German tanks get stuck. And it's being produced in staggering quantities at factories deep in the Soviet interior. German tank crews are stunned. Panzer General Heinz Guderian personally inspects knocked-out T-34s at the front and realizes Germany has a crisis. Their entire tank fleet is obsolete. The 37mm guns on Panzer IIIs literally bounce off T-34 armor. Even the upgraded 50mm guns struggle. German tankers have to use the heavier, shorter-range 75mm howitzers on Panzer IVs, and even those only work at close range against side or rear armor. Hitler receives the reports and goes ballistic. The Soviets, backwards, primitive Soviets, have better tanks than Germany? Unacceptable. He demands an immediate response. Two parallel programs begin, a heavy breakthrough tank that will become the Tiger and a medium tank to replace the Panzer III and IV entirely. The medium tank contract goes to two competitors, Daimler-Benz and MAN. Daimler-Benz proposes essentially copying the T-34, a diesel-powered tank with similar armor layout and a rear-mounted turret. It's practical, proven, and could be in production quickly. MAN proposes something different. Yes, they'll use sloped armor like the T-34, but they'll mount a more powerful gun, a high-velocity 75mm specifically designed to penetrate thick armor at long range. They'll use a gasoline engine because that's what German industry can produce in quantity. They'll incorporate German engineering excellence, interleaved road wheels for a smooth ride, torsion bar suspension, precision optics, excellent crew ergonomics. Hitler reviews both proposals in May 1942. He chooses MAN. The Daimler-Benz design is too similar to the enemy. Germany will show the world that German engineering is superior. The Panther program officially begins. Target 250 tanks per month by May 1943. But there's a problem nobody wants to acknowledge. The Panther is being rushed into production faster than any tank in German history. Normal development takes years of testing, prototype refinement, component validation. The Panther gets months. The first prototype runs in September 1942. Mass production begins in January 1943. That's 4 months from prototype to production line. Insane for a completely new design. Engineers know they're cutting corners. The final drive, the gearing that transfers power from the engine to the tracks, is designed for a 35-ton tank. But armor keeps getting added. The Panther grows to 45 tons. Nobody redesigns the final drive to handle the extra weight because there's no time. It's a ticking time bomb. July 5, 1943. Operation Citadel, the Battle of Kursk, Germany's last major offensive on the Eastern Front. Hitler delays the attack for months specifically to wait for Panthers. He's convinced these new tanks will be the decisive weapon. 200 Panthers are committed to the offensive. They're organized into special battalions and given elite crews. German propaganda celebrates them as invincible. Soviet intelligence is worried. Reports suggest these new tanks might render Soviet anti-tank weapons obsolete. The first day is a disaster. Panthers break down before reaching combat. Engines overheat in the summer heat. Transmissions fail. At Kursk, more Panthers became casualties due to mechanical problems than combat damage. Guderian later notes that the tanks burnt too easily. The fuel and oil systems were insufficiently protected. The Panthers that do reach combat prove their firepower is real. The 75mm KWBK 42 gun is devastating. It can penetrate Soviet T-34 and KV-1 tanks at ranges exceeding 1,500 meters, distances where Soviet guns can't hurt the Panther at all. The sloped frontal armor is nearly impenetrable. Soviet 76mm guns bounce off harmlessly. Even the new 85mm anti-tank guns struggle against the glacis plate. But the mechanical failures continue. Fuel lines leak. The complex cooling system fails constantly. The interleaved road wheel suspension, beautiful on paper, gets packed with mud that freezes overnight, immobilizing the tank. When something breaks, repairs are difficult because components are complex and spares are scarce. Many Panthers are simply abandoned when they break down because recovery is impossible. By the end of Kursk, the Panther battalions are shadows of their former strength. Not because Soviet guns destroyed them, because they destroyed themselves. The after-action reports are damning. Engine bearings fail catastrophically. Head gaskets blow. The final drives, predictably, snap under the excessive weight. German engineers scramble to fix the problems. They install copper rings to seal engine heads. They replace faulty bearings. They derate the engine from 700 to 580 horsepower to extend its lifespan, which also drops maximum speed from 34 miles per hour to 28 miles per hour. Every fix adds weight or reduces performance. The Panther becomes incrementally better, but never actually reliable. By late 1943, Panthers in the field report that engine life has increased to 435 to 621 miles before requiring major overhaul. That sounds like progress until you realize Allied tanks routinely run for thousands of miles between overhauls. The Sherman's engine can go 3,000 to 4,000 miles. The T-34, despite its reputation for crudeness, manages 1,000 to 2,000 miles. The Panther's 600-mile engine life is still catastrophic by any standard. Let's talk production. The initial target was 250 Panthers per month. This was increased to 600 per month in January 1943. Despite determined efforts, this figure was never reached. Production in 1943 averaged 148 per month. In 1944, it averaged 315 per month, peaking at 380 in July. Why couldn't Germany hit their targets? Multiple reasons. Allied bombing disrupted factories and component suppliers. The Panther required specialized machine tools that were in short supply. The complex design meant each tank took more man-hours to build than a Panzer IV. Quality control suffered as production ramped up. Later Panthers had increasing defects as material quality declined and inexperienced workers replaced skilled craftsmen. Total Panther production reached about 6,000 vehicles by war's end. That sounds substantial until you compare it to Allied production. The United States built nearly 50,000 Shermans. The Soviet Union produced over 57,000 T-34s. Germany's entire Panther production equals roughly 10% of Soviet T-34 output. But raw production numbers only tell part of the story. The real crisis is operational availability. Frontline combat strength peaked at 2,304 Panthers on September 1, 1944. That same month, 692 Panthers were reported lost. That's a 30% monthly loss rate, and most of those losses weren't from combat. German tank units reported readiness rates around 35 to 50% for Panthers, compared to 90 to 95% for Allied tanks. At any given time, half your Panthers are broken and waiting for parts that may never arrive. This isn't sustainable. Germany is losing the Panther War not because Allied guns are destroying them, but because German mechanics can't keep them running. The spare parts situation becomes nightmarish. Albert Speer, Minister of Armaments, makes a fateful decision early in production. Prioritize building complete tanks over producing spare parts. The logic seems sound. You need tanks at the front. But when those tanks break down, there are no replacement engines, no final drives, no transmissions. Functioning Panthers in the field have to be cannibalized for parts to keep other Panthers running. Allied tankers notice something strange. They'll capture or destroy a Panther, then days later encounter another Panther with components obviously salvaged from the destroyed vehicle. The Germans are so desperate for parts they're scavenging battlefields. June 1944, D-Day, Allied forces land in Normandy. Until shortly before D-Day, Allied intelligence believed the Panther was a heavy tank that wouldn't be produced in large numbers. Then they learned that Panthers comprised a significant portion of Panzer division strength. American and British tankers get their first encounters with Panthers in Normandy's Bocage country. The experiences are terrifying. A Sherman crew spots movement in a hedgerow 1,200 meters away. Before they can react, a Panther round punches through their frontal armor. The Sherman explodes. The Panther crew can see the kill, but the Sherman crew never even saw the enemy. This happens repeatedly. The Panther's 75mm KWK-42 gun can penetrate a Sherman's frontal armor at 2,000 meters. A Sherman's 75mm gun can only hurt a Panther's side armor at under 500 meters, and only with a perpendicular hit. Frontal engagements are suicide. Post-war, the U.S. Army calculated it cost 5 Shermans to destroy 1 Panther. British forces have a slight advantage. Their Sherman Firefly variant mounts a 17-pounder gun that can penetrate Panther armor at reasonable ranges. But Fireflies are rare, and German crews quickly learn to target them first. So why don't the Panthers dominate? 3 reasons: mobility, numbers, and reliability. The Panther weighs 45 tons. It gets stuck in mud. It can't cross many bridges. It's slow to maneuver in close terrain. Allied tanks are lighter, faster, more agile. In the close-range fighting of Normandy Bocage, that mobility matters. The numbers are overwhelming. For every Panther, the Allies have 10 Shermans or T-34s. German Panthers get isolated, surrounded, attacked from multiple directions. Even if 1 Panther kills 5 Shermans, the 6th Sherman gets a flanking shot, or the 7th. Allied commanders can trade tanks because they have tanks to trade. German commanders can't afford to lose a single Panther because replacements won't arrive for weeks. And the reliability crisis continues. German commanders during the Battle of the Bulge expected that 20% of Panthers would suffer mechanical breakdowns during a simple road march. 4 times higher than British tanks, 20 times higher than American vehicles. You can't fight if you can't reach the battlefield. December 1944, the Battle of the Bulge, Germany's last major offensive. The Germans commit 471 Panthers to the Western Front, with 336 operationally ready. That's 71% availability, actually pretty good by Panther standards, suggesting they've been conserving tanks and accumulating spare parts for this offensive. The Panthers perform well initially. Their firepower devastates American tank units, caught by surprise. But as the offensive bogs down, the problems return. Panthers run out of fuel. Germany's fuel shortage is catastrophic by late 1944. Tanks are abandoned not because they're damaged, but because there's no fuel to move them. The offensive collapses. The Panthers are destroyed or captured. We need to talk about the final drive because it's the perfect metaphor for everything wrong with the Panther. The final drive is a set of gears that transfers power from the engine through the transmission to the drive sprockets that turn the tracks. It's under constant stress. All the engine's power flows through it, and it has to handle not just propulsion, but also steering. The Panther's final drive was designed for a lighter vehicle. When armor weight increased during development, nobody had time to redesign it. Jacques Littlefield, who restored a Panther, noted, "We found that the alloy and gears used in their construction were as good as we could make them today." I suspect the main problem with the final drive was that they were designed for a much lighter version of the Panther. Once they started to up-armor the Panther, there was no room to beef up the final drives to handle the extra weight. The gears simply couldn't handle the load. They'd strip, crack, or shatter. A January 1945 meeting of the Panzer Commission recorded serious complaints about final drive failures across all German tank types. Prior to the 1945 Eastern Offensive, there were 370 defective final drives reported on Panthers alone. German industry made numerous modifications to the final drive on the Panther OSF G in September and October 1944, but they could never fully solve it. The fundamental problem was that the gears needed to be bigger and stronger, but there was no space in the hull to fit bigger components without a complete redesign, which was impossible during wartime production. After the war, the French acquired Panthers and tried to use them. The experience was disastrous. Even operating under peacetime conditions, without combat stress, the Panthers proved so unreliable they couldn't be used for testing. Some caught fire. The French quickly gave up and scrapped them. The Czechs captured Panthers and tried to integrate them into their post-war army. They repaired and refurbished damaged vehicles, assigned them to training schools and reserve units. But technical problems kept many in repair shops. The Czech army never officially accepted the Panther for service, and survivors were assigned to operational storage for use only if the country was attacked. By 1959, they were all scrapped. This is the damning verdict. Even skilled mechanics in peacetime couldn't keep Panthers running reliably. In combat, with field conditions, limited spares, and constant stress, forget it. So was the Panther a good tank? It depends on what you're measuring. As a weapon system in isolation, gun, armor, optics, crew layout, it was excellent. The 75mm KWK 42 gun was one of the best tank guns of the war. The sloped armor was highly effective. The optics and fire control were superb. German crews appreciated the relatively spacious interior and good crew ergonomics. But tanks don't fight in isolation. They're part of a military system that includes production, logistics, maintenance, doctrine, and strategic objectives. And when you evaluate the Panther as part of that system, it's a failure. Germany needed thousands of reliable medium tanks that could be produced quickly, maintained easily, and kept operational under field conditions. The Panther was none of these things. It was complex to build, difficult to maintain, and constantly broken. Its advantages in firepower and armor protection were negated by the fact that half of them weren't running at any given time. Compare this to the T-34. Soviet tankers complained constantly about the T-34's crude interior, poor ergonomics, difficult transmission, and inadequate vision devices. But the T-34 was simple to build, easy to maintain, and reliable enough to fight. The Soviets could produce them in vast quantities and keep them running with minimal logistics. That's what wins wars, or the Sherman. American tankers knew it was outgunned and under-armored compared to Panthers. But the Sherman started every morning, could be repaired by the crew with basic tools, and could be produced in staggering numbers. 5 Shermans might die to kill one Panther. But America could afford 5 Shermans and Germany couldn't afford to lose one Panther. By March 1944, some German units reported that mechanical problems had been resolved and Panthers were performing well. But performing well for Germany meant engines lasting 600 miles and final drives not breaking constantly. By Allied standards, that's still terrible. The Panther consumed resources Germany couldn't spare. Each Panther required specialized components, skilled labor, and extensive man-hours. Those same resources could have produced 2 or 3 Panzer IVs, proven tanks that were reliable and effective. Or they could have gone toward producing the fighters Germany desperately needed to defend against Allied bombing, or the anti-tank guns that were actually stopping Soviet advances. Hitler's obsession with having the best tank led Germany to produce a tank that was too good, too complex, too heavy, too sophisticated for the war Germany was actually fighting. By 1944, Germany needed quantity and reliability. It got neither. The Panther was feared for good reason. Allied tankers who faced Panthers knew they were outmatched in direct combat. The psychological effect of knowing your tank's gun can't penetrate the enemy while his can destroy you from beyond visual range is devastating. Many Allied veterans remembered the Panther as the most dangerous tank they encountered. But fear doesn't win wars. The Panther couldn't be where it needed to be because it was broken or out of fuel. It couldn't be produced in sufficient numbers because it was too complex. It couldn't be maintained in the field because spares didn't exist. All the firepower and armor in the world means nothing if you're sitting in a repair depot while the enemy drives past. Around 6,000 Panthers were produced, one of Germany's most produced tanks. At peak strength, around 2,000 were in service. That's less than 1 month of Soviet T-34 production, less than 6 weeks of American Sherman production. The numbers are stark. Germany lost the tank war not because its tanks were inferior, but because it couldn't field enough tanks that actually worked. Today, only about 7 Panthers exist in running condition worldwide. Another 14 complete but non-functional examples sit in museums. They're beautiful machines, testament to German engineering capability. They're also monuments to strategic failure, proof that technological superiority without logistical sustainability is worthless. The Panther teaches a hard lesson. In war, good enough and available beats excellent but rare every single time. The Sherman was good enough. The T-34 was good enough. The Panther was excellent, and Germany lost. Would Germany have been better off producing Panzer IVs exclusively? Almost certainly. The Panzer IV was reliable, proven, and simpler to build. It couldn't match the Panther's firepower or armor, but it could actually reach the battlefield and fight. Germany produced about 8,500 Panzer IVs during the war, more than Panthers, and they were far more reliable. The Panther was a tank designed for the war Germany wanted to fight. A mobile offensive war where superior technology could deliver decisive victories. But by the time Panthers reached the front in meaningful numbers, Germany was fighting a desperate defensive war where reliability and quantity mattered more than individual superiority. The war had changed, but the tank hadn't. That's why the Panther was feared but failed. It was the right tank for the wrong war, built by a nation that could no longer afford to pursue perfection. Allied tankers feared it, German mechanics cursed it, and historians debate it. But at the end of the day, the Panther couldn't change the outcome of World War II, because you can't win a war with tanks that won't start. If this exploration of World War II's most controversial tank grabbed you, that like helps others discover these deep dives into military history. Subscribe for more investigations into weapons that were feared but failed, or succeeded despite massive flaws. What other World War II equipment debates should I tackle? Was the Tiger I worth the resources? Did the Stuka really deserve its fearsome reputation? Was the MG-42 actually the best machine gun of the war? Drop your suggestions below. Every comment shapes the next deep dive. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next historical debate.